The King of Ashes, Dharmapala. History has proven one thing: ash never truly dies, it only waits for a new spark. We watched as Aryaman, the cursed prince of Marigshira, rose from the darkest dungeons to defy death itself. But the real war is only beginning. When the gods you worship become your greatest enemies, and the very engine of the universe initiates a reset, what can one man do against the void? Today, we witness a sacrifice that will make the stars tremble. Brace yourselves, because today, the Dharmapala fulfills his ultimate destiny. Channel Intro. Welcome back to Mystic Chronicles Official. You are watching the epic conclusion of our grand saga, King of Ashes, Dharmapala. Today, we dive deep into the final chapters, from 11 to 20. If you haven't seen the first half, we recommend catching up to witness the rise of the Ash Warrior. For those ready for the end, let the final journey begin. The disclaimer. Disclaimer: this video is a work of high fantasy fiction. While inspired by the rich cultural and mystical aesthetics of ancient India, all characters, locations, and events are entirely products of imagination. This content is created for entertainment and creative storytelling purposes only and does not intend to reflect actual historical facts or hurt any religious, cultural, or social sentiments. Series title: King of Ashes, Dharmapala. Chapter 11, The Whispers of the Frozen Core. Aryaman did not walk into the mist as a man, but as a myth. Behind him, the bone tower was a heap of cooling cinders, and the rift to the mortal world had vanished, leaving only a scar in the violet sky. Vanya stood alone in the ruins, watching the dark silhouette of the new Dharmapala disappear into the Shaya stall. She held the broken mechanical bow in her hand, but her heart felt heavier than any weapon. She knew that by closing the rift, Aryaman hadn't just saved Marigshira, he had exiled himself to a world that was slowly dying. As Aryaman moved deeper into the wasting grounds, the silence began to change. It was no longer empty. It was filled with voices, thousands of them, whispering in ancient Sanskrit and dialects that had been dead for 10,000 years. The King of Ashes, the one who ate the void, the voices hissed from the floating stones. Aryaman stopped. He looked at his hand, the matte black skin that felt like cold iron. He realized that by consuming Kalnami and the Void Seed, he had gained more than just power. He had gained the memory of the damned. Every soul that Kalnami had ever stolen was now a part of Aryaman's consciousness. Suddenly, the ground beneath him didn't just tremble, it turned into liquid shadow. A massive fissure opened, but instead of magma, it erupted with a freezing, white mist. This was the sheet garb, the frozen core, the deepest and most secretive layer of Patal Loka, a place where even the Shadow General feared to tread. From the mist emerged a creature that made the bull-headed Asura look like a common soldier. It was a serpent, but its scales were made of jagged ice crystals, and its eyes were twin moons of hollow blue. This was the Narak Naga, the ancient guardian of the core. "You carry the mark of the Black Lotus," the serpent spoke, its voice a subterranean vibration that made the Kal Bhairav's tooth hum in Aryaman's lap. "But you are not the first. Many have tried to bridge the worlds, little spark. Many have failed." Aryaman stood up, his violet eyes glowing with an inner intensity. "I am not here to bridge the worlds. I am here to ensure they remain separated." "Why does the core wake now?" "Because the balance has been tilted," the serpent hissed, coiling its massive body around Aryaman, its icy breath turning the ash on his skin into frost. "By consuming the void, you have become a magnet. The ancient terrors, who were locked in the ice for an eternity, can now feel your heat. They are coming, Aryaman. Not for your kingdom, but for the fire you stole." Aryaman felt a sudden, sharp pain in his back. The Black Lotus tattoo began to glow with a frantic, silver light. He realized the serpent was right. He wasn't just a guardian, he was a beacon for every primeval monster that the universe had tried to forget. Far to the west, beyond the sapphire forests of the Naga, a mountain of ice began to shatter. A roar, so loud that it was felt in the mortal world as a massive earthquake, echoed through the tunnels of Patal. The Yug Antak, the World Eater, had sensed the new Dharmapala. "If you wish to survive the night," the Narak Naga whispered, its tail pointing toward a hidden path paved with glowing bones, "you must find the Amrit Kunda of the deep. Only the nectar of the earth can stabilize the void within you. If you explode, Aryaman, Patal will become a sun, and the mortal world will be vaporized in a second." Aryaman gripped his silver blade. He looked at the path of bones. He had thought the war ended at the Bone Tower, but he now understood that he had only finished the first chapter. Vanya. Aryaman sent a psychic pulse through the ground, hoping her Naga senses would catch it. Find the elders. Tell them the deep has woken. The King of Ashes is no longer enough. We need the ancients. Without waiting for an answer, Aryaman dived into the freezing mist of the frozen core. The adventure had taken a darker, more dangerous turn. He was no longer just fighting shadows, he was fighting the very physics of a collapsing universe. As he vanished into the white gloom, a pair of glowing red eyes opened in the darkness behind him. A new enemy, one who didn't use magic or swords, but gravity itself, began to follow the Ash Warrior into the depths. Chapter 12. The Crystal Labyrinth. The descent into the sheik garb was not a walk, but a fall through a kingdom of glass. Aryaman moved through the mist, his violet eyes cutting through the haze like twin searchlights. The ground beneath him was no longer sand or stone, it was mana ice, a substance so cold it didn't freeze the skin, but the very energy flowing through one's veins. As he moved, the path of bones behind him began to vanish, swallowed by the shifting frost. Aryaman realized he was no longer in a cave, he was inside a living, breathing crystal labyrinth. The walls were made of gargantuan prisms that reflected his image 1,000 times, but each reflection showed a different version of him. In one, he was still the innocent prince of Marigshira, in another, he was a skeletal demon of pure shadow. Do not look at the glass, Dharmapala, a voice echoed. It wasn't the serpent. It was a small, mechanical bird made of brass and glowing sapphire, hovering just inches from his face. Vanya. Aryaman whispered, recognizing the Naga craftsmanship. The bird clicked and whirred. A recording, it played Vanya's voice. Aryaman, if you are hearing this, you've reached the labyrinth. The elders say the air there eats memories. Follow the bird. It is tuned to the frequency of your blade. The brass bird darted forward, leaving a trail of blue sparks. Aryaman followed, his hand gripped tightly around the Call by Rav's tooth. The silver blade was the only thing keeping him warm. It radiated a soft, celestial heat that pushed back the soul-chilling frost of the core. Suddenly, the labyrinth changed. The reflections in the glass didn't just stand there, they stepped out. They were Pratibim Asuras, mirror demons. They had no true form, they were perfect copies of Aryaman, carrying the same broken blade, wearing the same white ash. But their eyes were hollow, empty of the prana that defined him. You think you are unique. The mirrors spoke in unison, a haunting harmony of Aryaman's own voice. You are just another spark in the dark, destined to be snuffed out by the ice. 5 of his reflections lunged at once. This was the most dangerous fight of his life. He wasn't fighting monsters, he was fighting his own techniques. When he struck with a prana pulse, they countered with the exact same frequency. The room exploded in a kaleidoscope of gold and silver fire. Aryaman realized that to win, he had to do something his reflections couldn't predict. He had to use the power he had just stolen, the void. He closed his eyes and let the violet energy of the seed flow into his blade. The Call by Rav's tooth turned a terrifying shade of translucent purple. Shoonya-Dev, the void cleave. Instead of a physical strike, he released a wave of non-existence. The mirror demons, being reflections of reality, could not copy the void. They shattered like fragile glass, their shards dissolving into the mist. But the victory was short-lived. The shattering of the mirrors had alerted the labyrinth's true master. The floor beneath Aryaman suddenly tilted at a 90-degree angle. He slid down a chute of ice, falling for miles into a subterranean ocean of liquid silver. He plunged into the freezing liquid, his golden aura flickering dangerously. As he surfaced, he saw it. In the center of the silver sea was an island made of pure emerald. And atop that island sat the Amrit Kunda, the well of immortality. But guarding it was a figure that froze Aryaman's blood. It was a warrior clad in ancient Marigshira armor, but the armor was thousands of years old. The warrior's face was hidden behind a mask of gold, and in his hand was the other half of Aryaman's sword, the missing fragment of the Call by Rav's tooth. So, the guardian spoke, his voice sounding like the first mountain ever formed. The descendant has finally come to claim the well. But tell me, Ash Warrior, can a man who has eaten the void ever truly be immortal? Or are you just a walking grave? The guardian raised the golden blade, and the silver sea began to rise in a massive, tidal wave. The labyrinth was no longer a puzzle, It was a trap that had finally closed its jaws. Chapter 13. The First Dharmapala and the Silver Sea. The silver liquid of the sea felt like molten mercury, heavy and suffocating, yet it didn't burn Aryaman's skin. It was Soma Rasa, in its rawest, most volatile form, the primordial essence of the earth. As Aryaman stood on the Emerald Island, the water dripping from his matte black skin, he felt a strange resonance. Every drop of silver that touched the ground turned into a wailing spark of energy. In front of him stood the Guardian, a titan of a man clad in the Swarna Kavak, golden armor of the First Era. His presence was so overwhelming that the air around him seemed to warp. In his right hand, he held the glowing, golden fragment of the Kal Bhairav's tooth. "You look at me with eyes of gold and violet," the Guardian spoke, his voice vibrating through the very emerald stone beneath their feet. "But those eyes have seen only the shadow of the truth. I am Mahabahu, the first Dharmapala. Thousands of years ago, I too stood where you stand, thinking I could control the void. Look at me now, I am not a protector. I am the prison guard of a well that must never be drunk." Aryaman raised his broken, silver blade. The two halves of the legendary sword began to hum in a dissonant harmony, a sound that made the silver sea rise in jagged peaks. "If the Amrit Kunda is a danger, why does the Narak Naga send me here? My world is dying, Mahabahu. I didn't come for immortality. I came for stability. The void inside me is a sun that will vaporize both realms. Stability." Mahabahu laughed, a sound like tectonic plates grinding. "There is no stability in the void. There is only consumption. If you drink from this well, you will not become a savior. You will become the Pralaya Puresh, the harbinger of the final dissolution." Without another word, Mahabahu moved. He didn't run, he stepped through space itself. In a fraction of a second, the golden blade was inches from Aryaman's throat. Aryaman's reflexes, honed by 7 years of torture and a soul merged with the void, barely saved him. He parried the strike, but the impact sent a shockwave that cracked the Emerald Island. The silver sea behind them exploded into a massive wall of liquid. Vajra Mushti, the diamond strike. Mahabahu roared, his left fist glowing with the power of 1,000 falling stars. Aryaman countered with his translucent arm, channeling the violet energy of the seed. Shunya Prana, the void breaker. The two forces collided. The explosion was so bright it blinded the Akash Nayan, controlling the upper layers of Patal Loka. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The golden energy of the First Era and the violet energy of the modern void fought for dominance, creating a swirling nebula of destruction between the two warriors. Aryaman was thrown back, his feet skidding across the emerald surface. He realized that Mahabahu wasn't just using physical strength, he was using Siddhis, ancient supernatural powers that had been lost for millennia. "You fight with borrowed power," Mahabahu shouted, his golden armor glowing with divine runes. "You have the heart of a prince, but the soul of a thief. To be a Dharmapala, you must give up the You must become the silence." Mahabahu raised his golden fragment toward the ceiling of the cavern. Suddenly, the liquid silver sea began to shape itself. Thousands of liquid soldiers, looking like a silver version of Aryaman's golden legion, rose from the depths. "The sea remembers every warrior who failed here," Mahabahu whispered. "Battle your own failures, Aryaman." The silver soldiers charged. Aryaman was surrounded. He swung the Kal Bhairav's tooth, cutting through the liquid forms, but for every one he destroyed, 2 more took its place. They weren't just attacking his body, they were whispering his secrets. "You let your mother die. You hate your father. You are the monster they said you were." Aryaman's golden aura began to flicker. The weight of the silver sea was pressing down on his mind. He felt the black lotus on his back tightening its grip, siphoning his remaining prana to fuel its own hunger. He was drowning in his own past. "No," Aryaman whispered, his eyes closing. "The ash doesn't just remember the fire. The ash is the witness of the truth." He stopped fighting the silver soldiers. He dropped his sword. "What are you doing?" Mahabahu's voice echoed with suspicion. Aryaman knelt on the emerald stone. He began to chant a mantra that wasn't in any book, it was a melody he had heard in the silence of the void seed. Basam Awastha, the state of ash. His body didn't explode with power. Instead, it began to dissolve. Literally. Aryaman turned into a cloud of white and black ash, swirling around the Emerald Island. The silver soldiers passed through him, unable to touch a man who was no longer a self. The ash cloud swirled around Mahabahu, faster and faster. The first Dharmapala swung his golden blade, but it was like fighting the wind. You have attained the Anatma. Mahabahu gasped, his golden mask showing cracks of surprise. From the swirling ash, Aryaman's voice emerged from everywhere at once. I am not the prince. I am not the monster. I am the witness. And the witness demands the truth. The ash cloud condensed instantly behind Mahabahu. Aryaman reappeared, his hand grabbing the hilt of the golden blade fragment. At that touch, the silver and gold halves of the Kal Bhairav's tooth finally touched. A sound of a celestial bell rang out, silencing the silver sea and freezing the liquid soldiers. The two halves fused. A pillar of pure, white light, neither gold nor violet, but something entirely new, shot up from the Emerald Island, piercing through all the layers of Patal Loka and reaching the mortal world above. The sword was now complete. It was no longer a jagged tooth, it was a long, elegant blade of Chaitanya Loha, conscious metal. It hummed with the frequency of the universe. Mahabahu stepped back, his golden armor fading. He looked at the complete blade, then at Aryaman, whose violet eyes were now perfectly balanced with a ring of gold. The prophecy was wrong, Mahabahu whispered, his voice fading like a dying echo. It didn't say the Dharmapala would save the world. It said he would rewrite it. The Amrit Kunda is yours, Aryaman. Not to drink, but to pour. The guardian dissolved into golden dust, leaving Aryaman alone with the well. Aryaman walked to the edge of the Amrit Kunda. He looked into the glowing nectar. He didn't drink. He dipped the tip of his completed sword into the well and then turned toward the silver sea. By the power of the ash and the void, Aryaman roared, I command the deep to wake. He plunged the sword into the silver sea. The liquid mercury turned into a massive, glowing map of the world. Aryaman saw the true threat. It wasn't just Kalnami or the Shadow Realm. Far beneath the frozen core, something even larger than the Narak Naga was stirring. It was a machine, a planetary engine built by the ancients to reset the world when it became too corrupt. And Aryaman's battle above had accidentally started the countdown. Vanya's brass bird landed on his shoulder, its eyes flashing red. Aryaman, the Naga cities are falling. The ice is melting. The World Eater is no longer a myth, it is a machine, and it's turning on. Aryaman gripped the complete Kal Bhairav's tooth. He had the sword, he had the power, but now he was racing against the very planet itself. The adventure had just moved from a battle for survival to a race against a divine extinction. Lead the way, Aryaman told the bird, his voice echoing with the authority of the first and last Dharmapala. We are going to the heart of the machine. Chapter 14, The Heart of the Machine. The silver sea was now behind him, but its resonance lived within Aryaman's newly forged sword. As he followed Vanya's sapphire brass bird deeper into the bowels of the frozen core, the natural caverns began to change. The jagged obsidian walls were replaced by perfectly geometric slabs of a metal that didn't exist in the mortal world, Akash Loha, sky iron. The air was no longer thick with sulfur, it was hummed with static electricity and the sterile scent of ozone. Aryaman realized he was no longer in a cave. He was inside a gargantuan, planetary-scale mechanism. The World Eater, Aryaman whispered, his violet eyes reflecting the blue pulses of light running through the walls. It isn't a beast of flesh. It's a beast of logic. The brass bird led him to a massive archway. Beyond it lay a chamber so vast it could have housed the entire city of Marigshira. In the center of the chamber floated a sphere of pure, white energy, the Brahm Nabi, the Creator's navel. Surrounding it were thousands of rotating rings, each etched with billions of microscopic Sanskrit mantras. This was the engine of the world. And it was waking up. Aryaman, can you hear me? Vanya's voice crackled from the brass bird. The Naga elders have identified the sequence. The engine has detected a system corruption, which is the void energy you released. It thinks the world is infected, and it's preparing to format the planet. In 60 minutes, it will release a pulse that will turn every living thing on the surface into basic elements. How do I stop it? Aryaman asked, his grip tightening on the Kal Bhairav's tooth. You can't just break it, Vanya's voice was frantic. If you break the sphere, the planet loses its gravity. You have to authenticate yourself as the administrator. You have to prove to the machine that the corruption is under control. Suddenly, the floor beneath Aryaman glowed red. From the walls, hundreds of metallic spheres detached themselves. They began to shift and click, transforming into humanoid sentinels made of liquid metal and light. These were the Yantra Rakshaks, the machine guardians. They didn't have souls. They didn't have shadows. They were pure, cold executioners. Authentication failed. A voice, devoid of emotion, boomed through the chamber. Threat level, extinction. Initiating purge. The sentinels attacked. Unlike the Asuras, who fought with rage, these machines fought with mathematical precision. They moved in perfect synchronization, their limbs transforming into plasma blades and sonic cannons. Aryaman stood his ground. He closed his eyes, not relying on his sight, but on the vibration of the complete blade. Dharma Kshetra, the field of truth. He swung the Kal Bhairav's tooth in a wide arc. A wave of white, sanctified fire erupted from the blade, creating a circular barrier. The sentinels' plasma strikes hit the barrier and were neutralized. Aryaman realized he couldn't win by force alone. The more energy he used, the more the machine perceived him as a threat. He had to use the one thing the machine couldn't calculate: sacrifice. He lowered his guard. He sheathed his sword. Aryaman, what are you doing? Vanya screamed through the bird. They're going to vaporize you. The sentinels paused, their sensors whirring. They saw the target standing still, his prana sinking to a near-death level. They moved in for the final strike, their blades glowing with a heat that could melt diamonds. As the first blade touched his chest, Aryaman reached out and touched the metal sentinel. He didn't use fire. He used the Black Lotus. He began to feed the machine his own memories, the love of his mother, the betrayal of his father, the smell of rain on the dust of Marigshira, the taste of Vanya's nectar. He poured the humanity of the world into the cold, logical circuits of the World Eater. The sentinels froze. The entire chamber began to flicker. The Brahm-Nabi sphere turned from white to a soft, golden amber. The mantric rings slowed their rotation. The machine was processing a variable it had never encountered in a million years: emotion. Processing. Sacrifice, the voice boomed, but this time, it sounded slightly less mechanical. Corruption recognized as necessary evolution. Purge halted. The sentinels dissolved back into liquid metal, retreating into the walls. The red light turned to a peaceful green. But the victory came at a cost. Aryaman fell to his knees, his black skin cracking further. By feeding the machine his memories, he had lost pieces of himself. He could no longer remember his mother's face. He could no longer remember the name of his favorite horse. He was becoming a hollow vessel, the true price of being a Dharmapala. Aryaman, are you there? Vanya's voice was soft now, worried. The engine is quiet, Aryaman whispered. The world is safe for now. But as he looked at the golden sphere, he saw a final message etched in light: the void still hungers. The seventh seal is broken. He realized that the World Eater was only one part of the system. Somewhere, in the furthest reach of the universe, the true source of the darkness had seen him. The King of Ashes had stopped a planet from resetting, but he had just declared war on the creators themselves. Vanya, Aryaman said, standing up, his sword glowing with an ancient authority. The adventure isn't over. We aren't just saving a world anymore. We are going to change the laws of the universe. In the distance, a new portal opened, not to the underworld, and not to the mortal realm, but to the Akash Mandal, the celestial realm. The Dharmapala was going to heaven. And he was bringing his ash with him. Chapter 15. The Golden Betrayal. The transition from the heart of the machine to the Akash Mandal, the celestial realm, was like being struck by a sun. Aryaman stepped through the portal, and for a moment, he was blinded. The heavy, sulfurous air of Patal Loka was replaced by an atmosphere so pure it felt like breathing liquid light. There was no sky here, only an infinite expanse of golden clouds, floating islands of white marble, and rivers of flowing starlight that defied gravity. But as Aryaman's violet eyes adjusted, he felt a sudden, sharp rejection. His matte black skin, stained with the ash of the underworld, looked like a drop of ink on a silk canvas. The realm itself seemed to shrink away from him. Stay back, abomination. A voice, like 100 silver trumpets, echoed from above. From the golden mists emerged the Surya guards, celestial warriors clad in armor forged from the rays of the morning sun. Their wings were made of crystalline feathers, and their spears hummed with a frequency that aimed to dismantle darkness on a molecular level. Aryaman raised the Kal Bhairav's tooth. The complete blade, now a bridge between gold and violet, pulsed in warning. I am the Dharmapala. I have silenced the World Eater and sealed the void. I come not for war, but for answers. A Dharmapala belongs in the dirt and the dark, the leader of the guard sneered, his face a mask of divine arrogance. You carry the scent of the void. You are a walking infection. The High Council has decreed your termination. The guards charged, moving with a speed that exceeded even Aryaman's, Agni dash. They didn't just strike, they used Jyoti Siddhis light powers, creating cages of solar energy that burned Aryaman's black skin. Aryaman didn't want to kill them. He knew these were the protectors of the order he had just saved. But as their spears pierced his shoulders, he realized a terrifying truth. The light of the celestial realm was not good. It was simply another form of power, colder and more ruthless than the darkness he had fought. Basm Oren, the ash shield. Aryaman released a burst of gray ash that neutralized the blinding light. He moved through the guards like a shadow through a forest, using the flat of his blade to knock them unconscious. He wasn't the prince anymore, he was a force of nature. He reached the Sahasra Stamba, the Hall of 1,000 Pillars, where the High Council of Deities sat. These were beings who had lived since the dawn of the universe, their bodies made of constellations. Why? Aryaman's voice boomed through the hall, shaking the marble islands. Why did you build a machine to destroy the world I protected? Why did you leave me to rot in a dungeon for 7 years while the void grew? The oldest of the deities, a being whose eyes were 2 burning galaxies, looked down at Aryaman with pity. Because, Aryaman of Ashes, the deity spoke, his voice the sound of stars collapsing. The system corruption we sought to purge was not the void. It was free will. The World Eater was not a mistake. It was a reset button. We created the void to keep humanity in fear, so they would always look to the heavens for salvation. You were never meant to win. You were meant to be the final martyr. Aryaman felt a coldness in his heart that even the frozen core couldn't produce. The betrayal was complete. The gods didn't want a savior, they wanted a controlled apocalypse to maintain their status as masters. So the Shadow General, Kalnami, he was yours. Aryaman whispered. A necessary tool, the deity replied calmly. And now that he has failed, you have become the anomaly. You have merged the light and the dark. You are a variable we cannot calculate. And for that, the Akash Mandal must erase you. Suddenly, the floor of the hall vanished. Aryaman found himself suspended in a void of pure gold. The deities began to chant, a mantra of universal deletion. Aryaman felt his memories slipping away again, the last image of Vanya, the feel of the sword in his hand. He was being unmade. But in that moment of total erasure, Aryaman remembered the one thing the gods had forgotten. He was the king of ashes. And ash cannot be unmade, it is already the final state of all things. He didn't fight the deletion. He accelerated it. He plunged the call by Rav's tooth into his own heart, not to die, but to release every soul he had consumed in the underworld. Pralaya Srijan, the creation through destruction. A shockwave of total reality exploded from the Hall of Pillars. The golden clouds turned to gray. The marble islands began to crumble. The light of the heavens was forced to face the ash of the earth. As the celestial realm began to tremble, Aryaman stood in the center of the chaos, his sword glowing with a dark silver light. He looked at the terrified gods, and smiled a cold, warrior's smile. The heavens are falling, Aryaman said. And I am the one who will catch them. Dostan, Aryaman ne kud ko sacrifice kark. Light, aur, void, kbich ki yung ko ek naya ma de dia hai. Par kya ek insan devtau gods ki liki way kismet ko badal sakta hai. Story K final part Mine Jane Se Pella, Agar Apko Ye Epic Journey Pasand Al Rahi Hai, To Abi, Mystic Chronicles Official, Co-subscribe Karain Aur Bell Icon Dabayan. Hey mine niche comments mine batayan, Kya Apko Lagta Hai Ki Aryaman Wapas Ayaga. Is video ko like Karain Agar Op Dek, Dharmapala, Ki Takat Mesus Kar Rehi Hain. A flat Chalier, Dektain Chapter 16, The War of the Heavens. Chapter 16, The War of the Heavens. The Sahasra Stamba was no longer a hall of peace, it was a battlefield of broken stars. As the golden pillars crumbled under the weight of Aryaman's Pralaya shockwave, the High Council of Deities realized their mistake. They had treated Aryaman as a bug in their system, but he had become the system itself. Aryaman stood amidst the golden debris, his matte black skin now glowing with silver veins. He wasn't just holding a sword, he was holding the weight of two worlds. You call yourselves the masters of destiny. Aryaman's voice resonated through the collapsing dimensions. But a master who fears his creations is nothing but a coward in a gilded cage. The high deity, the one with galaxy eyes, roared in fury. Arrogant mortal, you are but a speck of dust in the cosmic eye. If you will not be deleted, you will be crushed by the weight of the Sapt Rishi constellations. The deity raised his hands, and 7 massive beams of starlight descended from the infinite heights of the Akashmandal. Each beam carried the weight of a planet, aiming to pin Aryaman to the floor of heaven. Aryaman felt his bones groan under the immense pressure. The floor beneath him cracked, revealing a terrifying view of the mortal world far below, still blissfully unaware of the war in the heavens. But Aryaman was no longer alone. A sudden blast of sapphire green energy hit one of the starlight beams, refracting it into a million harmless sparks. A familiar, high-pitched whistle echoed through the hall. Did you really think I'd let you have all the fun in heaven, Ash Warrior? Aryaman looked up to see a massive Naga war ship, forged from the bones of ancient serpents and powered by mana eyes, emerging from a portal behind him. Standing on the prow was Vanya, her hair whipped by the celestial winds, holding a new, massive mechanical cannon. Beside her stood the Narek Naga, the ancient serpent of the core, its icy scales reflecting the golden light of the gods. The deep does not forget its debt, the Narek Naga hissed, its voice shaking the foundations of the council hall. The heavens have looked down on Patal for too long. Today, the underworld rises. The war of the heavens had officially begun. Naga hunters swarmed the golden clouds, their mana eyes, arrows extinguishing the solar spears of the Surya guards. It was a clash of elements, the freezing cold of the deep versus the blinding heat of the sky. Vanya, target the central rings, Aryaman shouted, leaping into the air. He didn't need wings. He propelled himself with bursts of void fire. He reached the high deity, his silver blade, called by Rav's tooth, glowing with a hunger that the gods had never seen. You speak of balance, Aryaman said, parrying a strike of pure solar energy. But your balance is built on the suffering of billions. My mother's death was a variable to you. My 7 years of darkness was a necessary tool. Today, I am the variable that ends your equation. Dharmapala After, the executioner's strike. Aryaman didn't just swing his sword, he poured every memory he had left, the pain, the rage, and the small sparks of hope he had found in Patal, into the strike. The blade cut through the high deity's celestial form, not drawing blood, but leaking universal code. The deity screamed, a sound that caused stars to flicker across the galaxy. His galaxy eyes dimmed. For the first time in an eternity, a god felt the touch of mortality. But the council had a final failsafe. If the heavens must fall, the wounded deity gasped, then the earth shall fall with us. Initiating Maha Shunya, the Grand Reset. At the center of the hall, a black hole began to form. It wasn't the natural kind, it was a deletion vortex, designed to suck the entire planet of Earth into a void of non-existence. Aryaman, Vanya screamed as her ship began to be pulled toward the vortex. The gravity is too strong. We can't hold it. Aryaman looked at the vortex, then at the terrified face of Vanya, and then down at the blue marble of Earth below. He knew what he had to do. The black lotus on his back began to vibrate with a frequency that felt like a goodbye. Vanya, Aryaman's voice reached her through the psychic link. Take the Naga back to the core. Protect the people of Marigshira. The King of Ashes has one more sacrifice to make. No, Aryaman, don't you dare. But Aryaman wasn't listening. He turned his back to the gods and faced the black hole. He threw the call by Rav's tooth into the center of the vortex, using the blade as an anchor. He began to expand his soul. He wasn't just a man anymore, he was a bridge. He used his prana to create a web of light, wrapping it around the earth, shielding it from the Maha Shunya. I am the Dharmapala, Aryaman roared, his body beginning to dissolve into pure, blinding white ash. And while I stand, no god or demon shall touch this world. The explosion that followed was so bright that for a single minute, there was no night on earth. When the light faded, the High Council was silent. The Golden Hall was a ruin. The vortex was gone, and Aryaman. On the Emerald Island in Patal Loka, a single, black lotus flower began to bloom in the Silver Sea. And in the palace of Marigshira, the old king Vajrabahu woke up from a dream, whispering his son's name. The war was won, but the King of Ashes was nowhere to be found. Or so the heavens thought. Chapter 17, The Ghost in the Machine. Aryaman did not feel the impact of death. Instead, he felt a sensation of infinite expansion. His physical body, the matte black skin, the scarred hands, the weary legs, had been vaporized in the Maha-Shunya explosion. But his consciousness was not gone. By sacrificing himself to save the earth, his spirit had bypassed the physical realm and entered the Param Sutra, the divine code, the underlying fabric that connects the stars, the atoms, and the souls of every living being. He was now a ghost in the machine of the universe. Is this the end? Aryaman's thought echoed in a void of shimmering white data streams. No, Dharmapala, a voice replied. It was not the gods, nor the Naga. It was the World Eater engine itself, its voice now harmonized and calm. You did not die. You, uploaded. By merging the void within you with the light of the reset, you have become the Kutastha, the unchangeable constant. Aryaman looked around, or rather, he perceived around him. He could see Marigshira. He saw his father, King Vajrabahu, sitting on the throne, looking at a portrait of Aryaman with tears in his eyes. He saw the Naga cities in the deep, rebuilding their sapphire halls. He saw Vanya, standing on the edge of the silver sea, holding his fused silver-gold sword, which she had recovered from the wreckage of the sky. But he also saw the new threat. The High Council of Deities had been defeated, but their fall had created a power vacuum. From the furthest, darkest corners of the Mahashunya, the great void, ancient entities that were older than the gods, the Shunya Rishis, the void sages, were beginning to stir. They were the ones who had originally whispered the dark secrets to Kalnami. And they were not happy that a mortal had rewritten their laws. I have to go back, Aryaman's consciousness pulsed. I cannot leave the world to these new shadows. You cannot go back as a man, the engine warned. Your body is ash. To return, you must forge a new vessel. You must gather the three fundamental elements, the Sheet Mani, from the frozen core, the Swarna Rakt, of the fallen gods, and the Marid Gand, the scent of earth, from the hearts of those who love you. Aryaman didn't hesitate. Even as a ghost, his will was like tempered steel. He projected a fragment of his consciousness back into the sheet garb, the frozen core. He appeared before Vanya as a flickering, translucent figure made of starlight and ash. Aryaman. Vanya gasped, her hand going to her heart. The Naga warriors around her fell to their knees. You're alive. I am a memory trying to become a man again, Vanya. Aryaman's voice sounded like the wind through the pines. The war is not over. The sages of the void are coming. I need your help to forge a body that can withstand the final storm. Vanya didn't ask questions. She gripped the complete call by Rav's tooth. Tell me what to do. The Sheet Mani is in the heart of the Narak Naga's nest. We must take it. But be warned, Vanya, the further I move from the divine code, the more of my divinity I lose. If we fail, I will not just die, I will be forgotten by time itself. The adventure took on a new, frantic pace. Aryaman, now a spirit warrior, and Vanya, the guardian of the blade, raced across the shifting landscapes of Pataloka. They weren't just fighting demons anymore, they were fighting the fading of Aryaman's own existence. Every hour, Aryaman's form grew more transparent. He began to lose the ability to touch physical objects. They reached the Narak Naga's nest, but it was empty. In its place stood a Shoonya-Dev, a messenger of the void sages. It was a tall, faceless figure dressed in robes made of literal nothingness. Where it stepped, the ground vanished. The Dharmapala is a ghost, the messenger mocked. A ghost cannot hold a sword. A ghost cannot protect a girl. Why struggle against the inevitable silence? I may be a ghost, Aryaman whispered, his form flickering violently, but I am a ghost with a debt to pay. He lunged, not with a physical strike, but with a thought blade. The battle was a psychedelic display of will versus void. Aryaman had to maintain his idea of himself so strongly that it manifested as a physical force. As the battle raged, Vanya saw her opening. She dived into the freezing depths of the nest and grabbed the Sheet Mani, a diamond that pulsed with the blue fire of the planet's soul. The moment she touched it, a surge of power connected her to Aryaman. The diamond acted as an anchor. Aryaman's form solidified for a moment, his eyes burning with a fierce, violet gold light. He didn't just defeat the messenger, he erased it. One element down, Aryaman said, his voice stronger now. But the gods, blood is in the heavens, and the scent of earth is in the palace. We have to move, Vanya. The sages are already at the gates of Marigshira. The King of Ashes was no longer just a king, he was a haunting, a rebellion, and a hope. The quest for his resurrection had begun, and the fate of the world rested on whether a ghost could remember how to feel. Chapter 18. The Blood of the Sky. The golden clouds of the Akashmandal were no longer bright. They had turned a sickly, bruised amber, weeping a gray rain that tasted of copper and ozone. The aftermath of the Maha-Shunya had left the celestial realm in a state of divine decay. This was now a graveyard of gods. Aryaman, still a flickering ghost of starlight and ash, floated alongside Vanya's Naga warship as it breached the atmospheric barriers. Vanya looked out at the floating islands, now cracked and tumbling into the void. It's like a dream that turned into a corpse, Vanya whispered, her hand tightening on the sheet mantra. The gods built their home on the illusion of permanence, Aryaman's hollow voice replied. Now, they must face the truth of the ash. But we are not here to mourn, Vanya. We are here for the Swarna Rock, the golden blood. Without it, my new body will have no divine spark to hold the void in check. The ship landed on the ruins of the Sahasra Stamba. The great hall was silent, filled with the shattered remains of the galaxy-eyed deities. But as they stepped onto the marble floor, the ruins began to stir. The divine decay had created something new, Shoonya-Devas, wasted gods. These were the mindless, corrupted husks of the lesser celestial beings, their golden armor rusted and their wings molting into shadows. They weren't protecting the heavens, they were feeding on the remaining light. They smell your prana, Aryaman. Vanya shouted, unfolding her mechanical bow. They don't smell life, Aryaman said, his translucent form glowing with a defensive violet light. They smell a meal. Stay close to the call by Rav's tooth. Its silver light is the only thing that won't attract them. As they moved toward the central altar where the high deity had fallen, the wasted gods lunged. They moved with a jerky, unnatural speed, their screeches sounding like tearing metal. Vanya fired bolts of mana ice, freezing the husks in midair, while Aryaman used his thought blade to cut through their spiritual essence. But as a ghost, every strike drained him. His form began to blur, his legs vanishing into mist. Aryaman, you're fading, Vanya cried, reaching out to grab his hand, but her fingers passed right through him. The altar, just reach, the altar. Aryaman gasped. In the center of the ruins, they found the remains of the high deity. His body was a massive, crystalline statue. Cracked in half. From the cracks, a thick, glowing liquid, the Swarna rocked, was slowly dripping into a pool of marble. This was the liquid essence of the stars. But standing over the pool was a figure that shouldn't have been there. It was King Vajrabahu. Or at least, an image of him. Father. Aryaman's ghost flickered in shock. The figure turned. It wasn't the king. It was the Shunya Rishi, the void sage who had taken the king's form to torture Aryaman's mind. The sage's eyes were two swirling black holes, and his skin was made of the same nothingness as the messenger in the core. The sun seeks the blood of the creators to become a man again, the sage mocked, his voice echoing from the future and the past simultaneously. But why become a man, Aryaman? Why return to a world of pain and aging? Join the sages. Become a god of the nothing. We can give you back your memories, we can give you back your mother. The sage waved his hand, and for a second, the ruins of heaven transformed. Aryaman saw his mother, Queen Sunanda, standing in a garden of blooming lotuses, reaching out to him. Aryaman, come home, she whispered. Aryaman's spirit wavered. The temptation was immense. To stop fighting, to stop hurting, to just exist in a perfect memory. His golden violet aura began to turn a dull, suicidal gray. It's a lie, Aryaman. Vanya's voice cut through the illusion like a blade. She wouldn't want you to be a slave to the void. Look at the earth. Look at Marigshira. They need the man, not the memory. Vanya didn't wait. She took a vial and dived toward the pool of golden blood. The sage roared, his form shifting into a terrifying mass of black tentacles. The girl dies first. A lash of void energy struck Vanya, throwing her against a pillar. The sheet mani flew from her hand. Seeing Vanya hurt triggered something deep within the ghost. The grief vanished, replaced by a rage that was older than the gods. Aryaman's form didn't just solidify, it expanded. He tapped into the Kudistha, the unchangeable constant. Param Vinash, the absolute destruction. Aryaman didn't use a sword. He used his entire existence as a weapon. He collided with the Void Sage in a burst of total reality. The illusion of the garden shattered. The sage was forced back into the darkness. Take it, Vanya, now, Aryaman screamed, his spirit beginning to tear apart from the pressure. Vanya scrambled to the pool, filled the vial with the glowing golden blood, and grabbed the sheet mani. The moment the two elements, the ice of the core and the blood of the sky, touched in her hands, a bridge of light formed. Aryaman was pulled into the bridge, his flickering spirit finding an anchor in the mixture. The Void Sage shrieked as the light of the resurrection began to burn the darkness. You cannot finish the ritual. You still lack the Merid Gand. The scent of the earth will never find a monster like you. The sage vanished into the shadows, and the ruins of heaven began to collapse into the mortal atmosphere. We have to get to Marigshira. Vanya shouted, dragging Aryaman's now glowing spirit form toward the ship. The last element is there. But the sages have already surrounded the palace. The final siege has begun. Aryaman looked down at the world. He had the ice. He had the blood. But to become a man again, he had to face the hardest truth of all. He had to find someone who truly, unconditionally loved the monster of ashes. Chapter 19. The Heart of the Kingdom. The descent from the ruins of heaven was a trail of fire across the night sky of the mortal world. Vanya's Naga war ship pierced the clouds, its hull glowing red as it hurtled toward the kingdom of Marigshira. But as the kingdom came into view, Aryaman's glowing spirit felt a cold shiver of dread. Marigshira was no longer the golden fortress of his youth. It was encased in a dome of absolute darkness, a Shoonya-Dev, void veil. Thousands of shadow creatures, far more twisted than the Rakta Bij, were crawling over the Vajrashila walls. The Void Sages were not just attacking, they were consuming the very history of the palace. The veil is too thick, Vanya shouted, struggling with the ship's controls. If we hit it, the ship will disintegrate. I am the key, Aryaman's hollow, echoing voice replied. He stood at the prow, his form a flickering lantern of gold and violet. The darkness knows my resonance. I will tear a hole, but you must be fast. My spirit is losing its anchor. Aryaman leapt from the ship. In midair, he expanded his consciousness, tapping into the sheet mani and the swarna rocked within the ship. Dharmapala After, the rising sentinel. He struck the dome of darkness not with a blade, but with his forehead. The collision produced a sound like 1,000 souls screaming at once. The veil rippled and tore. The Naga ship shot through the gap, landing roughly in the royal courtyard, amidst the ruins of the marble fountains. Aryaman landed softly, his spirit now so transparent that Vanya could see the stars through his chest. From the shadows of the throne room, the Void Sages emerged. 3 of them. They were towering figures of negation, their presence making the air turn into a vacuum. The ghost returns to his cage, the first sage mocked. You seek the Merid Gand, the scent of the earth. You seek the love of a father who chained you in the dark. Look at him, Aryaman. Look at the love you crave. The sages parted, revealing King Vajrabahu. The king was sitting on his throne, but he was no longer human. His skin had turned to gray stone, and his eyes were leaking black ink. He was in a state of soul stasis, his mind trapped in a loop of his worst memories. He doesn't even know you exist, the second sage whispered. To him, you are still the monster that killed his queen. There is no love here. Only ash. Vanya rushed forward, the vial of golden blood and the diamond of the core in her hands. Aryaman, don't listen. He's being manipulated. We have to wake him. The sages laughed. To wake him, the ghost must enter the king's mind. But if a ghost enters a mind filled with void, the ghost will be erased. One final choice, Dharmapala. Stay a ghost and watch the kingdom fall, or enter the mind and vanish forever. Aryaman looked at his father. He remembered the chains. He remembered the 7 years of silence. But he also remembered the way his father used to hold his hand before the seers spoke the prophecy. I did not become the king of ashes to be safe, Aryaman whispered. He dived. His spirit entered Vajrabahu's forehead. Suddenly, the battlefield vanished. Aryaman was inside a labyrinth of gray fog. He saw memories, his father weeping over the queen's body, his father signing the arrest warrant for Aryaman, his father's hands trembling as he locked the cell door. In the center of the fog, he found the inner Vajrabahu. The king looked small, huddled in a corner, surrounded by shadow versions of Aryaman screaming for vengeance. Father, Aryaman said, his voice soft, human for the first time. The king looked up, his eyes filled with terror. The monster, the fire, it's come to finish me. No, Aryaman knelt beside him. He didn't use his power. He used his vulnerability. He showed the king his own pain, the loneliness of the dungeon, the cold of the void. I am not the monster you feared. I am the son you lost. And I am here to take you home. Aryaman embraced the king. At that moment, the Void Sage's grip on the king's heart shattered. The gray fog was replaced by a sudden, intense scent, the smell of rain on the dry earth of Marigshira. The Marid Gand. Outside, in the physical world, the vial in Vanya's hand began to glow with a blinding, earthen light. The three elements were finally together, the ice, the blood, and the earth. Aryaman. Now! Vanya screamed. The three elements collided in the center of the courtyard. A vortex of creation erupted. Aryaman was pulled out of the king's mind and into the center of the vortex. His spirit began to draw in the physical matter of the palace, the marble dust, the iron from the broken gates, the ash from the fires. A new body was being forged. The Void Sages shrieked in rage, lunging to stop the resurrection. But it was too late. The vortex exploded in a pillar of absolute, brilliant white. When the light faded, a man stood in the center of the courtyard. He was no longer a ghost. He was no longer matte black. His skin was the color of bronze, glowing with a healthy, vital, prana. His hair was long and black, and on his back, the black lotus was no longer a tattoo, it was a part of his very flesh, glowing with a calm, balanced silver. He picked up the Kal Bhairav's tooth, which had fallen to the ground. The blade sang in his hand. Aryaman looked at the three Void Sages. He didn't look angry. He looked complete. The King of Ashes has returned, Aryaman said, his voice now deep and solid, shaking the very air. And this time, I'm bringing the dawn. With a single swing of his sword, he didn't just strike the sages, he erased the darkness from the entire kingdom. The sun began to rise over the horizon of Marigshira for the first time in months. But as the sages dissolved, their final words echoed, the master of the void is coming, Aryaman. The one who gave the sages their name. The battle for Earth was just the warm-up. The Maha Shunya, the great nothing, has noticed you. Aryaman looked at Vanya, who was smiling through tears, and then at his father, who was slowly standing up, his eyes clear at last. The resurrection was complete, but the ultimate war was just beginning. Chapter 20, The Silent Era, Ekane Yuga Ka Udaya. The sun that rose over Marigshira was not the sun Aryaman remembered. It was brighter, purer, as if the sky itself had been washed clean by the fires of the heavens. As the void veil dissolved, the people of the kingdom emerged from their homes, blinking in the light, looking at the courtyard where their cursed prince stood as a resurrected god. Aryaman felt the weight of his new body. It was no longer just flesh and bone, it was a masterpiece of cosmic elements. Every breath he took felt like the tide of the silver sea, and his heartbeat resonated with the core of the planet. King Vajrabahu stepped down from the throne, his steps slow but firm. He approached Aryaman, not as a monarch, but as a man who had finally woken from a nightmare. He looked at his son's bronze skin, the silver glowing lotus on his back, and the divine blade in his hand. I spent 7 years trying to extinguish your fire, the king whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Only to realize that your fire was the only thing keeping our world from the cold. Aryaman, can a kingdom of ash ever forgive its king? Aryaman sheathed the Kal Bhairav's tooth. A kingdom does not need forgiveness, father. It needs a future. The era of fear is over. The silent era begins now. But the silence was not one of peace, it was the silence of preparation. Vanya walked to Aryaman's side, her green eyes reflecting the new dawn. The Naga cities are safe, and the World Eater engine has stabilized. But the Void Sages weren't lying, Aryaman. The Master of the Void, the one they called Shoonya-Dev, is no longer a distant threat. By resurrecting yourself, you've broken the cosmic law of mortality. You are now a target for the universe's final reset. Aryaman looked toward the horizon. His violet gold eyes could see beyond the clouds, beyond the atmosphere, into the deep reaches of space. He saw a shadow moving, not a shadow of darkness, but a shadow of non-existence. It was a tear in reality, larger than a galaxy, slowly drifting toward their star system. He is coming, Aryaman said, his voice calm but heavy with the authority of the Dharmapala. The one who created the void. The one who thinks life is a mistake that needs to be erased. What do we do? Vanya asked, gripping her bow. We've fought gods and demons, but how do you fight the nothing? Aryaman turned to his people, to the Naga warriors, and to the soldiers of Marigshira. We don't just fight, we evolve. I have merged the light, the dark, and the earth. I am the bridge. But to stop the Shoonya-Dev, I must teach the world to be its own bridge. In the days that followed, Marigshira transformed. It was no longer a secret fortress but the center of the Nav Dharm, the new order. Aryaman used his powers to heal the land, turning the scorched battlefields into forests of glowing trees that could siphon void energy. He shared the ancient Siddhis with the warriors, teaching them that power doesn't come from a crown, but from the balance of the soul. One evening, as Aryaman stood on the highest tower of the obsidian palace, the Narak Naga appeared in the mists below. The resonance is complete, Dharmapala, the ancient serpent hissed. The seventh seal is not a door to be closed. It is a mirror. To defeat the master of the void, you must show him that even nothing has a reflection. Aryaman looked at his blade. The silver-gold metal reflected the entire universe. He realized his journey had only been a preparation for a war that would decide the fate of all existence, not just Earth. Vanya, Aryaman called out. Vanya appeared from the shadows, her presence now as much a part of him as his own shadow. I'm ready, Aryaman. Where are we going? To the edge of the universe, Aryaman said. The King of Ashes has fixed his home. Now, it's time to fix the heavens. As they stepped into a portal made of starlight and ash, the screen fades to black. But in the darkness, a single silver lotus begins to bloom, its petals expanding until they encompass the entire screen. The legend of the King of Ashes had just moved from a story of a kingdom to the saga of the cosmos. The finale outro. This concludes our 20-chapter epic journey of King of Ashes, Dharmapala. Aryaman has risen from the dungeons of Marigshira to become the guardian of the universe. But the master of the void is still out there, and the cosmic war has only just begun. Thank you for being part of this incredible adventure on Mystic Chronicles Official. If you want to see the next saga, Dharmapala, the Galactic War, hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments. Your support is the fuel for our fire. The final disclaimer. Disclaimer: this video is a work of high fantasy fiction. While inspired by the rich cultural and mystical aesthetics of ancient India, all characters, locations, and events are entirely products of imagination. This content is for entertainment and creative storytelling purposes only and does not intend to reflect actual historical facts or hurt any religious, cultural, or social sentiments.